Hello everyone to Forest Focus for an impromptu live podcast as we discuss the latest Nottingham Forest news with quite a few big things on the agenda. Neco Williams has officially signed his new deal till 2029. Newcastle have bid for the second or the third time, depending who you believe, Anthony Elanga. And interestingly, Forest have reportedly had a bid or a deal agreed, I should say, for Lyon winger Malick Fofana, a very talented young player. So we'll have a fairly brief chat about all that in the company of Michael Temple. Temps, how are you doing today?
Yeah, good, mate. Bit of a flurry of activity around Forest. Some of it speculative, but good to have some concrete news as well.
Yeah, definitely. We'll get into Neco and Elanga. The Fofana one's interesting for people who don't know about him. He's got one Belgian cap, 20-year-old left winger. As I said, plays for Lyon, so there's a lot of context around that. Breakthrough season, in a sense, last season. 11 goals in 46 games in all comps. I think 6 assists as well. Tricky young talent. Temps has been watching clips of him before to form some opinion on him, and I've got a clip coming up as well with an actual expert on the player, which I'll play in shortly. But it comes from Fabrizio Romano, who tweeted out about an hour ago. The Forest have agreed to deal with Lyon for Malick Fofana. No other agreement yet on the player side. Fofana waiting for Champions League clubs, with Chelsea still keen on him. How can Chelsea be keen on another forward? It's ridiculous. Understand Bayern and Napoli have also called to make an initial approach. Actually, we'll play the clip from Luke Entwistle first. He is the editor of Get French Football News. He's been on a couple of times recently. He gives some context around Fofana, who he does note just before this recording comes in that Fofana's changed agents as well. So he's definitely after a move this summer. But here's a little bit about him as a player if you're unfamiliar.
With a specific wording of it. You'd be looking at about 50 million. It might be within the price, euros that is. It might be within the price range for Forest, given that they have some form of European football. And he's a very, very exciting player as well. Very dynamic, very quick. Can do lots of things, can be a touchline hugger, can play inside. He's just someone who's very, very direct, very technically gifted. Not fully dissimilar to Ryan Cherky, who's maybe a little bit more well-known in his ability to work in tight spaces, but he's also someone who likes open space as well, and will dribble into that and will always look to be direct, a little bit unpolished, can lose the ball in stupid places sometimes. Defensive work can be improved too, but he is only 20, and he's had a pretty meteoric rise, I'd say, at Lyon since joining. Now a Belgium international, which is no small achievement to get into that team at such an age, and off the back of so few performances at the very, very top level as well. So, yeah, someone who I think is destined for big things.
Destined for big things. Excellent editing for me in about the last 5 minutes doing that there. We'll get into whether Forest might sign him just in a sec. But Temps, you've been watching a few clips of him there. What a very exciting young talent. What do you make of it?
Yeah, a bit of YouTube scouting and tallies with what Luke has said. Very direct, runs in straight lines. You can see why he'd be effective in a team like ours that likes to play on the counter, get from point A to B quickly. I think he'd be a nightmare to mark on a yellow card. He's got that change in direction in him, likes to come inside when he can, but also prepared to aim for the touchline. And when he gets there, he's pretty unselfish. I think his assist reel is as impressive as his goal scoring, but there's a real finisher in there. And I think if he was one of 3 wingers, it would just make Forest so much stronger in that last 30 minutes. We're going to come on to talk about someone he could potentially replace. But I think this is the profile of player that we need in the mix to make sure that when the starting wingers are rested, removed from play, we've got someone that can maintain the style, which is so effective. Very, very exciting young player, and not surprised to see that kind of price tag applied to him.
Let's talk a bit more about the prospects of actually signing, and then I'll put Fabrizio Romano's tweet back up. Even when I spoke to Luke a couple of weeks ago, Liverpool were mentioned, other big clubs as well. For Fabrizio Romano's wording as well, no agreement yet on the player side. He feels like he's dangling a carrot for other clubs. What's your initial thoughts on that, about whether this is just a pie in the sky thing and we're just being used as bait even?
Well, part of the service that Fabrizio Romano offers is to create interest around a player coming in or out, depending on the person feeding the information, right? So it would tally that it's in the interest of the agent to communicate to the elite clubs of Europe that Forest is sniffing around. I think there's respect put on that fact now. If Forest are bidding for a player, it will be well considered and well researched off the back of our success in the previous windows. It feels like a bit of a departure from what we've been doing in signing players for the kind of fees that got Elanga and Hudson-Odoi through the door. To shell out £50 million on a 20-year-old is a bit of a departure. But this is it. We're not trying to sign Jota Silvas anymore, the kind of player that would comfortably help you avoid relegation. We're trying to sign the kind of players that are going to enable you to compete on multiple fronts with 2 games in a week, with 8 games in December, as is going to be the case this year. And they cost money. There's a very well-researched band of players in the elite, those that have played international football, and to have a Belgium cap at 20, to find himself in Lyon and the predicament that they're in this moment in time. Clearly a player that's made the decision to move, and I hope we can be the beneficiaries of that. But yeah, serious cash to be dropping on a 20-year-old player. And I can see why. I understand the facets, but it's a slight surprise to me that we're in the market for this type of move at this stage of the window.
I suppose the other thing is we are trying to assign better players, which means we're competing with bigger clubs than we were before, and we're going to kind of have to take our place in the queue potentially. And maybe if we are going to get this player, it's probably because other clubs haven't pulled the trigger. So it's all part of the game in that sense, isn't it?
Yeah, I don't mind that. I think you could apply that logic, couldn't you, to the players that have been hits in recent times. Anyone that's starting in our 11 now that's been bought in the last 4 windows. Let's talk about Murillo. Let's talk about Hudson-Odoi, Elanga. You could make that case. The difference is the fee level, isn't it? And you wonder if there is perhaps a bit of a plan to trade, to move a player on, if we're going to finance incomings on this kind of level, because within the realms of PSR, even with European qualification, you can't have a net spend of £50 million in too many windows before that calculation catches up with you. So it does, if it's true, it does lead you to think about how Forest are going to balance the book and make this one happen. But if we're assessing the player objectively as an individual that could add value to our team, fit into our way of playing, and go on to become a better player than he is now, then he ticks every single one of those boxes.
The 50 million thing that a couple of guys are referencing, James and Danscape as well. That was so when I spoke to Luke, that was the fee that was being reported, and this was pre-Lyon's relegation, which is another slight spanner in the works as well, isn't it? Because we just don't know if Lyon are going to sit on players, aren't they? At least until they know the result of their hearing, and that could be another 3 or 4 weeks, I guess. So that's another factor we have to bear in mind.
Yeah, I think, look, if the number attached to this was 20 to 25, you'd understand the logic. I think it probably is a bit of a pie in the sky fee. And frankly, their attitude to selling may well change if there's fresh injection into Lyon, if they're successful in their appeal and find themselves in a different set of circumstances to those that have presented themselves now. So yeah, all told, it still feels like a difficult deal to do, especially if the fees are as reported. But again, like really pleased to hear that Forest are in the mix for players of this quality and working through a short list of individuals that have the required skills, have performed in big leagues in Europe and seem to be upwardly mobile, rather than being linked with, I'll use his name because it's there, a kind of Jesse Lingard, John Joe Shelby type signing, who has frankly passed their peak. So yeah, excited by the profile of player that we're in the market for. And just to reiterate the first point I made, we do need this winger, this change of pace player that can ensure that we're as strong in an attacking sense in the final 15 minutes of games as we are in the first 75.
Yeah. Owen mentions about using, our own bait. I mean, Matt Turner could be Vlachodimos. Obviously, there's Danilo as well. Paul Morley, Transfermarkt. I looked at this; it does have his value down at 30 million. It's so difficult to judge what his value actually is around Lyon and what this deal is. We just don't know what the fee Forest have agreed with Lyon. And Dan says how much they need to do to avoid relegation and get us into the Europa League. So again, speaking to Luke, Lyon have lodged their appeal. They found out why they were relegated. There is a groundswell of support around them within the big French clubs to keep them up, which is quite interesting. PSG have paid the fee for, is it Bradley Bacola or however you say it, up front to pump some money into Lyon. So, and Textor has stepped back as well and put other people in charge. So I've got a feeling that Lyon might win this appeal. Which would complicate things even further. So we'll have to keep tabs on that. And if Lyon win their appeal, then I think it might mean, as we were saying with Fletch, Temps, and Pete, that they do get Palace do get bumped down and we get bumped up. So yeah, we'll have to see. Just sum us up on this one, Temps. Exciting, but the gut instinct now is exciting, but probably won't happen. Do you think or not?
Well, it doesn't pass the sniff test at £50 million, does it? But I think it's the kind of player that we're after. And as per the striker search last summer, if he's the top of the list and we end up 2 or 3 down, it's good that we're exploring the most ambitious deals first. Love every aspect of the limited highlights I've seen from his time at Lyon. But yeah, I am balking at the fee for a player who currently finds himself at a club under immense distress.
We'll talk more. It probably leads nicely into the Elanga stuff. A quick word for the Trent Navigation. Obviously, you can get our live show tickets. Search gigantic.com. I found it today. Don't search Big Shed. Search Trent Navigation. Otherwise, they won't show up. But they're only a £5. And as you know, Kelvin Lewis are on the panel with Temps, with Pete, with Greg, and with Mikey. And also coming this Saturday, there is the Bingo Bonanza hosted by the influencer. Fothers will be there as well. The busiest man in the world. I text Fothers to see if he would do something tomorrow, and he's doing another quiz. And he's doing a quiz on Saturday as well. So you can get your tickets for what is basically a good family fun day at trentnavigation.com for that one. Well, there was a comment, Temps, here. I think it was from Derek saying this doesn't happen unless Elanga goes, which fits into our next part of the conversation. The Newcastle Chronicle reporting that Newcastle have now bid 50 million for Elanga. Weirdly, the Daily Telegraph reported they bid 50 million last week. So I don't know if this is the second bid or the third bid. What's your general thoughts on this bid of around 50 million?
Still short of what it would take to talk for me. I really don't want to sell Anthony Elanga. I think he's proven in the system and the environment. His chemistry with the group is really good. And I think he'll continue to improve. Really enjoy his training clips. He trains like an Olympic sprinter as much as he trains like a Premier League footballer. And when you combine those facets, you get goals like the one we saw from him last season when he's ran from the edge of his own box. Special player. And I'd be really, really disappointed to lose him. I think it's on the Newcastle thing. I've read a couple of I think overly confident pieces from the journalists that follow Newcastle about them acting as some kind of super-powered aggressor in this transfer window when the opposite applied last year when they were forced to do deals for Elliot Anderson that they didn't necessarily want to do. And I'm not sure that's the case. I think anyone dealing with Newcastle United is aware that they're a state-sponsored club with an unbounded ambition and bankroll to get things done, and they are going to find themselves paying a tax when they're trying to get players through the door. So I don't think they're in a particularly strong position to find value in the deals that they do, and I hope that manifests itself in trying to deal with Forest and get one of our star assets off our list. They're going to have to pay for that, and I think the price is quite a considerable way north of £50 million. So yeah, I suppose I just want to pour a bit of cold water on the optimism that Newcastle fans and reporters have at this moment in time. I don't think they're going to have it all their own way in this transfer window.
What do you make of Newcastle's, just the way they're bidding? I mean, it feels to me like Forest, there's this price of 60 million, which feels like a kind of a permission price where Forest fans will say, okay, 60 million feels about right. Anything over, anything under will wildly affect how we view it. But surely if you're Newcastle, it feels like Forest have laid their stance out pretty clear, and you either put up the 60 million or you move on, don't you?
Yeah, look, who knows what's going on behind the scenes. Elanga will be an ambitious player. He'll want to play at the highest possible level of of European football. He played Champions League football for Manchester United. And I know when he came in, one of the phrases that the coaches used with him is that we want to get you back in the Champions League. And there was a double edge to that. Of course, they wanted to get him there with Forest if possible, but they also know that is a thing that would motivate these players to come and do 2-3 years in a squad where you're starting week in, week out. A lot of the game plan is built around your strengths, and you can go out and impress and ultimately find the move. So look, I wouldn't be entirely surprised if behind the scenes Anthony Elanga was pretty keen on a move to Newcastle. But the fact is, Forest had the foresight to tie him to a 5-year contract. He's shone in the opening couple of years of that, and we're not in a position where we have to force through any kind of sale. So yeah, 60 million quid. We start to listen, obviously. And at that point, I trust the Forest football department to do the right thing in terms of getting the value, paying any clauses to Man United, and ultimately replacing him in the squad. But my hope at this point is that we don't deal and we find Anthony Elanga playing more games for Nottingham Forest.
Yeah, but what's your gut instinct then?
60
1st
mil.
of September. Well, 1st of September, is he in a Forest shirt, a Newcastle shirt, some other shirt? What do you think?
I think there's probably one more bid to come from Newcastle beyond this one, which I expect to be rejected. And yeah, if it's around 60 million quid, they'll probably be able to force that one through.
Great to have 370 people watching, by the way, because we did this at about 3 minutes notice. So good to have everyone on board. Do us a favour and hit like if you haven't already. I don't know if Teb's mentioned it there, but there is a report that we pay 20% of any deal to United from that £15 million initial fee. That's the sell-on clause. Let's go back to Malick Fofana because Foot Mercato, who are one of the big French outlets, for what it's worth, they've got 4.2 million followers on Twitter. They report something totally different. They just basically call out Romano. And there's a piece here they've just put out. Journalist Fabrizio Romano, Temps doesn't know about this, I'm just reading it to him, assures that Lyon and Nottingham Forest have reached an agreement for Fofana. However, Malick Fofana is still very far from joining the City ground because, according to our information, there is no agreement between the clubs. We can add that the French and English have never had discussions about a transfer for Fofana. That's good old Google Translate there. Is this part and parcel of the transfer window, do you think?
It's part and parcel of the cult of celebrity around Fabrizio Romano. And the fact that he doesn't necessarily need to trade in accurate information. If a club, an agent, has a message that they want to get out, he's happy to re-report it because of the notoriety of his Twitter account. So pinch of salt. Only get excited when you see "Here we go" and the photo of him in the Forest shirt. So yeah, I don't attach too much credence to that for now, particularly off the back of a more reputable French source, which you so eloquently translated.
Yes, we jumped there. I really bit on that, and we'll see if he's right or wrong. He's not been so hot on it on this summer for Forest after saying that Jaya Cunha was our player. But we'll see. But yeah, I'm more inclined to think that he's not coming to Forest based on everything we've said. We'll talk about Neco in 1 minute. There's a comment here about didn't we turn down 50 million for Elanga last year? Well, I think it was 50 million all in. It included Almiron, it included add-ons. It was on transfer deadline day, so it's more complicated. Certainly, but yeah, we'll follow it. Neco extending is great news. Neco Williams has extended his contract until 2029, as Owen mentions here. It feels like it's been something that's been coming for a while, but getting it over the line, getting a player tied down, that's a long contract as well. That's real. That's one of the highlights of the summer, isn't it?
We've made the point about Elanga, but Neco Williams isn't the player that we signed. He's so much better. I think he was signed as a lookalike for Jed Spence in that 3-5-2, which we enjoyed at the time, and to find someone who perhaps at the expense of some of their defensive qualities was comfortable on the ball, willing to be a dribbler, to get forward and support attacks. Fast forward to us now playing quite firmly 4 at the back in 90% of games. And he's had to learn how to play right back after being quite an adventurous right winger in his early days. He's not on loan at Fulham in the Championship anymore. He's not a bit part player at Liverpool. He's a starting player at what has become an established Premier League team. And he's grown with that. And I think he's been a big reason for it. There were detractors in the stands at the City Ground in his opening few games. I think he did struggle at first with the adaptation, which I've mentioned there. But now he's a very accomplished Premier League player. Absolutely no qualms about him being our starter in all competitions. I think he'll be selected for all the big matches. And the real question mark on both fullback posts is the backup, because Neco Williams and Olaina are our starters, and we can achieve any ambition that we have with them in those positions.
We'll wrap things up in a minute. How are you feeling about this transfer window then? I mean, we've just done a podcast where we've talked at the start about we might be signing Malick Fofana. Within 15 minutes, we've completely contradicted ourselves. Is this sort of just kind of strap yourselves in till August 31st and what will be, will be?
I think three things. The priorities for me at this point are clarity on those that are going to extend their contracts. So can Olaina, Callum Hudson-Odoi, maybe even Morgan Gibbs-White, if we need to pay him off the back of any bids we've rejected, be convinced to sign new terms at the City Ground. The second part is, are there going to be any blockbuster moves out the door which are going to generate serious cash? And I'm probably talking about Gibbs-White, Murillo, or, as seems more likely at this moment in time, Anthony Elanga. And then the third point is, how are we going to deploy our resources to become a better team and have more depth than we had last season? Because we all saw the abilities of our best 11 and maybe the peripheral 2 or 3 around that, which got us near the finish line. But they were extremely physically tired and faded in the running, and frankly need better backup to support their abilities. So what's going to break first? I think making a decision on who we're going to keep early in the window would be a positive way of us having an informed shopping list as it ticks down to deadline day. But as other teams work through their shopping lists, there's just as much chance that attention could turn to one of our players and a tempting bid be made. So it's what I want to see. I don't want to see any major departures. And if off the back of that we find ourselves shopping in South America for more value-based signings and going and nicking a £50 million winger from Lyon, then I'm all for that. I think success for me is the business we do with the players that have got us to this point. And then my vote, my hunch, my strategy would be to spend less on the depth rather than seek to have to replace one of the big guns, because it could just disrupt the entire chemistry of the team.
Yeah, it could blow up. Like if we sell an Elanga and eventually do get a Fofana. I mean, he'd be a top player, but there's a big risk associated with laying out that kind of money for a club of our size. And again, we don't know if it's 50 million or 30 million or whatever, but it's certainly substantial. Just before we go, Stephen asks about who else has been linked to Arsenal. I think I saw Chelsea. There's a couple of reports today. I saw Morgan linked with Arsenal in a couple of outlets, but nothing that makes me get too interested about it. Certainly, I would think so. We'll keep tabs on all that. This was an interesting 23 minutes of partly complete nonsense, perhaps, but the Neco stuff was concrete and the Elanga stuff's interesting and the Fofana stuff's interesting. If true, the truth will come out over the next few days, I'm sure. Certainly, if you've enjoyed this or found it interesting or confusing, do us a favor, hit like, hit subscribe, do consider membership or Patreon, or give us a lovely 5-star review on Apple or Spotify. Plan is to be back tomorrow night at, I think, 7:30 with Greg and Mark and maybe Chris, and we'll do a Q&A. So I'll put an appeal out for questions if you want to get some submitted or clear in your heads. In the meantime, Michael Temple, thank you very much.
No problem, mate. If you want a quick clip for social media just to summarise all that, something might happen with Anthony Elanga, but we hope it doesn't. Fabrizio Romano says something might happen with Fofana, but we don't think it will. But something has happened with Neco Williams. There's your 20-second update.
We just did it in 25 minutes. The Neco stuff is good news, though. So that's the main takeaway. We've got something good confirmed with Neco Williams signing till 2029. Right, we'll leave it there. Thanks for everyone's company. Good to have 400 people with us for that short impromptu podcast. Have a good evening, everyone. And if we don't see you tomorrow, we shall see you soon.